Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the Awesome Friday podcast. My name is Matthew, and I'm your host. And we are returning after a month-plus hiatus due to various reasons, but mostly because my dear co-host Simon was on holiday in his home country of England, which is how it's technically pronounced if you are a scholar of linguistics and historical pronunciation. This week we're going to be talking about two new movies. We're going to be talking about A Quiet Place Day 1 and then Deadpool Wolverine. But before we do that, here's approximately 10 minutes of banter. So how are you today, Simon? How was your trip?
My trip was wonderful. It was so. If you become a patron of ours for the price of a coffee, you can hear much more detail about my trip, which I know may not be selling it, but it was really wonderful to see family, friends, and eat everything, and see lots of culture and lots of history. And it did make us wonder if we should be moving back, and our parents getting older, and we miss the culture, miss the Scotch eggs, primarily the Melton Mowbray pork pies and the ale. But then the day we left, the whole country descended into riots, where a bunch of fuckwits raided shoe stores and set fire to libraries to apparently complain about immigration. So maybe I don't miss it after all.
You mispronounced racists.
Yeah, but what was nice is that a day after all of that fuckwittery, the numbers of those people were vastly eclipsed by the numbers of people who came out to vehemently encourage the Nazis to get the fuck out of the country because they're not welcome. And the whole many cities in my beautiful country rose up and said, actually, you're fucking idiots, get out. And this is how we stand up to bullies. This is the very English way of doing that. And it makes me kind of warm inside that so many people did that, because it's really, really important to stand up against the rise of right-wing populist thinking. And
well, it's not really a rise in England at the moment. It's been around for a while.
I think especially post-pandemic, I think there were, if you think back to Gamergate, this has been bubbling for a while. And everything, when Gamergate happened, a bunch of very intelligent people said, you got to do something about this now because it's going to turn into this. It will become this. And lots of people told them not to be silly because it's only video games, blah, blah, blah. And it has happened exactly as they said. And so now's the time in a lot of Europe where a lot of the politics is going right wing, and it's happening. The States is an interesting thing at the moment. I'll be interested to see how that goes, but Canada certainly has its problems too, and it's very important that it is rejected wholeheartedly, because it's very, very dangerous. But that's the idea of these people are coming to our country and breaking the sanctity of our white Christian country. And so we're going to oppose that by looting and stealing and setting fire to literature and breaking things in our own community. It's like the fucking stupidity of it cannot be overstated.
Not to mention the fucking irony. Don't come to our country and steal our things and burn it down and divide us socially. That's terrible. Good thing we didn't do that for 300 years.
Yes, absolutely. That's before you get into the whole, like, the reason why so much of this is messed up in the first place. So, yes.
Look, it's not our fault that we drew arbitrary lines on a map and fucked up your entire economy and culture. Just fuck
off. We spread our culture. Don't expect to spread yours.
Yes, we had dibs. We had dibs.
Oh, every time. Nice country. We'll take it. But this is our country. Oh, but do you have a flag?
Yeah.
Eliezer gets it. So that's nice, and we had a wonderful time, and everyone, in the nicest way, it was nice to hear my accent everywhere. It was nice to be called my love when I'm paying for stuff. It was nice not to have to tip for everything, for anything. It was nice to be able to pay the price on the ticket. It was nice to pay a third of the price for groceries than we pay here. Now, honestly, I won't get into the difference in price of groceries over there, but coming back to Vancouver, it's heartbreaking how much further your money goes in food in the UK than it does here, and the quality is great as well. The quality is so much better.
It's one of our main things at the moment in Canada is, we are in a cost of living. It's interesting, not to get too far into Awesome Friday politics here, but it's interesting how far into this cost of living crisis we are, and how the Canadian government's, the federal government especially, seems to only really give a shit about GDP and jobs, whilst we're struggling to make ends meet. It doesn't. It's an interesting problem to solve, and I don't currently see a good solution. But let me say right now, if you think Pierre Poilievre is a solution, you are incorrect. And also that if you think, I know at least one person has told me they want to vote for that person because they want the government to be more fiscally responsible. But my response to that is twofold. One is that cutting programs is not fiscal responsibility; it's cutting programs, and also that you cannot separate the damage you will do to the rights of minorities, the rights of women, the rights of transgendered people. You cannot separate that from his monetary policy. A vote for one is a vote for the other, and you cannot separate those two things. And as much as I am not really on board with our current prime minister anymore, I would take more years of him than any of the other options at this moment. But we just have three flavors of neoliberalism in this country right now. It's a problem.
One thing I noticed that I've always seen in the UK, whenever I've talked about this before with buying mobile phone plans, there's so much competition in the UK that the plans are always competitive and they're always good value for money. And I really felt the same is happening here as the UK when it comes to groceries, in that there's so much more competition in the UK. They have the German grocers Aldi and Lidl, and they have Tesco's and Asda's and all these different places, and local corner stores as well in the mix. So everyone's trying to attract people, and it feels like here you've got the big players, and they have been proven to be price fixing in the past. They got taken to court over price fixing bread, and don't
worry though. They
controlled here.
They had to pay a $500 million fine for their billions and billions of dollars for price fixing.
They don't care. And we decided to feed our entire extended family. We fed 12 people, a full roast chicken Sunday dinner, 2 roast chickens, all the trimmings, and drinks and dessert. We went and bought everything for £35, which is
but that's like $400. So
which is no, it was double and take off a bit, so that's like $60. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how much that would all cost buying in Vancouver? No.
Yes, I don't want to think about it.
Unbelievable, the difference. And it's not about supply. Canada has supply chains. It has resources. It has locally grown produce. And it's ridiculous. I went to a farmer's market yesterday and ended up basically emptying my wallet out because I wanted to buy 1 cucumber and I didn't have enough, so you just took whatever I had. You shouldn't be paying $5 for one item of vegetables. You just shouldn't. And that farmers markets, that's a different question completely. Farmers markets used to be the option where you buy directly from the farmer, so you don't have to pay for the extra, the capitalist nature of this. Even though it is organic and everything, you pay a little bit premium for that. But it's just ridiculous. The prices of everything are ridiculous here. Then we have a market in my hometown. Oh, I'm going to talk about cheese, so I might get a little teary. All these fantastic cheeses, like £2 each, or 3 for £5, which is about $8. And you couldn't get half of one of the blocks for $10, $12 here. It's just ridiculous.
Well, anyway, dairy in particular, big dairy in Canada is
big dairy is ridiculous in Canada. It's so restrictive.
On the one hand, I sort of, I do see the merit and the idea of trying to promote Canadian concerns for Canadian people, but at the same time, that protectionism has led to monopolies and oligopolies.
And also, if you want to do that, that's fine, but then have the quality there. Don't have the worst plastic cheddar for $10, $12 a block in the supermarket, and then say you're protecting Canadian interests by forcing us to eat that crap. They've even they've added new limitations to the imports of UK cheeses this year. And it's fine. If you want to be protectionist, that's fine, but then have the quality. Like, make stuff that's nice. Anyway. So what did you watch? In the last 3 weeks, what's the best thing you watched on TV? Because we don't talk about TV, really. So what's the highlight of your TV watching at the moment?
What's the best thing I watched on TV? That's a good question. What was the best thing I watched on TV? Because House of the Dragon just ended last week.
Mm-hmm. Like, ended? Is it finished, or just this?
No. Season 2 is over, and very frustratingly, we're not getting a season 3 until like 2026 or something.
Right.
Which is more than a little frustrating. We are getting a different series set in the same universe next year, but we're not getting House of the Dragon season 3 until the year after. Which is a shame, because I think it's a good show, and they're really going all in with the dragons now, which is good. We actually rewatched most of Game of Thrones in July. My wife watched all of it. I watched most of it. It's hard to say what was best, because the best things I watched were all old things. Mm-hmm. I watched that Apple TV Plus show We Crashed, which is, I don't know, it's very good, but Anne Hathaway is incredible in it. You know that there's a number of people in the world who have this irrational dislike of Anne Hathaway, I feel. And I think that stems in large part from she's a very good actress, and she's not shy about admitting that she knows that. And I think a lot of people think she's very smug, because we very much expect, especially women performers, to be very deferential and very humble. And she's never been that. She's always been like, yeah, I won an Oscar. I'm pretty great. But I feel like in this show, We Crash, her direction was, you know that person your haters think you are? Be that. Because she's a terrible person, and it's really something else to watch. Okay. What else? The Boys ended in July. The Boys season 4 ended in July, and I would argue people didn't seem to like it, but like season 4 did a lot of work on character development and set things up in really interesting ways for season 5, which is exactly what a penultimate season of a show is supposed to do. So I don't really get what to tell people there. Same actually with House of the Dragon. Like, it's a little bit disappointing that it was only 8 episodes, because Warner Brothers is stingy, because they're so horribly mismanaged. But at the same time, like, if the choice is more dragons, fewer dragons or fewer episodes, I will take fewer episodes every time. Like this, the episodes we got were all great.
Was there any big reveal or any legacy character? I'm completely unaware of the time crossover between House and Game of Thrones. So
there's 172 or 170 plus years between the shows. So House of the Dragon, we are seeing the ancestors of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. Like, we're seeing the beginning of the decline of the previous dynasty of rulers in this show, and also a big civil war in which was directly responsible for most of the dragons dying in that universe.
I hope they find a way to bring back Emilia Clarke, because I think she is I just really like seeing her do stuff, because I think she's amazing.
She definitely won't be in this show. It's just too much of a time discrepancy. Right. But I mean, there's a Jon Snow series in development, so who knows?
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah, and also, like, you know, the ending of Game of Thrones makes that kind of difficult to bring her back at all.
Okay. So, everyone seems. While we're talking about TV, I remember I wanted to ask you, because the scuttlebutt online is that the Bear season 3, lots of people don't like it at all. What's your take on that?
Oh yeah, they're wrong. It's a great season. So I think the I will say that, and I think this is actually tied into the reason there's a number of people who don't like the ending of The Boys season 4 or House of the Dragon season 2 and The Bear season 3, which is that they all end on a cliffhanger for what's going to come next, or at least set up for what's going to come next. And I would say in The Bear season 3, that comes a little bit out of nowhere. Like when you're watching the final, when I was watching the final episode, when the ending happened and it flashed to be continued on screen, I was like, wait, what? But like, that doesn't make it a bad show. It makes the finale a little bit unsatisfying. And I also I don't get the discourse around that show a little bit, just because like a lot of people didn't like the first episode of season 3, which is a half-hour long like visual tone poem set to a Nine Inch Nails song with minimal dialogue. That is, I would argue, a masterpiece of visual storytelling centering around the emotional fallout of the end of season 2, and it is an incredible half hour of television, of just any visual medium and performance and editing in particular. And people didn't like it. I don't. There's a real thing with like, I've talked about this before, but there's a real thing with people thinking and in terms of plot first and plot only, and wanting like and episodes like that sort of belie that expectation, you know. And I think that people are missing out on some beautiful work as a result. Like, that was the big thing with The Boys season 4 as well. Lots of people were talking about how like not a lot of stuff happened, but like a ton of stuff happened. Like, you just have to not only care about the overreaching plot, you know. Like, a ton of shit happened. Every character is in a different place than they were at the beginning, and is in a more interesting place for the ending of the story. And
that's good writing.
And there's some great performances as well, like some legitimately great. Like, I distinctly hope that Anthony Starr is recognized by all the awards bodies in whatever time frame it is that this awards for this season of TV happen. Like, he is next level good as Homelander in season 4, and I hope that they recognize that. So, yeah, TV's weird, but you know, Futurama's back now and it's fine, and we started watching Evil, which is bonkers in a good way, and yeah, I don't know. We are way over our banter time though, so should we get talking about some movies?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about the movies.
We have been talking for 17 minutes now.
That's fine.
About anything other than movies on our movie podcast.
No, it's interesting to me because I don't watch any TV. I don't have any time to watch any TV, so I do like hearing what you're watching. What should we talk about? Which film should we talk about first?
Well, let's talk about the slightly older, now streaming, A Quiet Place Day 1. And why don't you take us through the basic plot synopsis thereof, dear sir?
Yes, I would love to. A Quiet Place Day 1 is day 1 of A Quiet Place happening.
Shocking. Huge if true.
Sorry, I know that's a spoiler. We try not to do spoilers, but it's hard to avoid that one. Although fundamentally it's more like day 2 and 3, but that it wouldn't really work as a title, day 1 brackets and day 2 and day 3. It's the beginning of the aliens or whatever they are, monsters crashing down. You saw a very similar thing in Quiet Place Part 2. The pre-credit scene is rewinds time a bit and sees John Krasinski's character when the meteors crash and the monsters come out. And the beginning sort of plays out in a similar kind of way, but this movie is an expanded version of day 1. And what I was expecting was some kind of monster lore and maybe fighting back against the monsters, aliens style. And what I got was a very human story about dealing with death and facing death and friendship and anxiety and togetherness, and really not that much about the monsters apart from the fact that they're there and they will fuck you up if you get too loud. Basically, it follows Lupita Nyong'o's character, Samira or Sammy, is she's in a hospice for cancer sufferers, and they decide to take a little trip to New York. New York City, primarily to get pizza. Her thing is like she wants pizza. Like, I'll go if we get pizza. I just want to say at this point, this is a spectacularly well written film.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that she randomly wants pizza is very satisfyingly woven into the film as a story element. Um, and so they go to watch a marionette show, a strangely affecting marionette show, and then the meteors start landing, and there's panic, and then people realize they have to be quiet. So if you've seen these movies before, especially the second one, people realize, I think, quicker in real life quicker in the movies than they would in real life, that they have to be quiet. But anyway, and the rest of the film is really about her personal quest to get to Brooklyn, to this one specific pizza place to have pizza. And along the way, she meets different sort of groups of people. Uh, and it is one of those great horror movies that reminds you that the absolute last place you want to be in this kind of situation is with a large group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Always like, and so it's very clever in its horror elements. And she picks up Joseph Quinn's character Eric along the way as a kind of straggler in a, I don't know if this makes sense, but in a real Studio Ghibli way. If you've seen Spirited Away, there's a moment in Spirited Away that is beautifully echoed in this movie, as he kind of just follows her at a distance, even though she tells him not to. There's a lot of Miyazaki in this in their interactions, and they kind of find this connection, this friendship, and he has terrible anxiety about what's happening, because I think most people would, and it's just really wonderful. It's just a wonderful, wonderful film. It's just a human story that is like Godzilla minus one. It's a human story set against this backdrop of monsters that they have to deal with, but don't go in expecting resolution or to learn anything about the monsters, because this is not that film. This is there's one moment in this film where you kind of get a glimpse into the Alien Queen style person, and so I was really worried at that point that they were going to have, okay, before we leave, we're going to take out the Queen, we're going to set up some explosives, and it's not a spoiler really to say that this film isn't intended. This film doesn't want to do that. This film is only about the human side. It's a tiny little human story in this bigger backdrop, and I think it's more successful for it. And that's I'm blown away by this film. Like, I loved this film. It felt like good theater, if that, in a way, it felt like really good theater, and I really love how it dealt with. Uh, so when you know your time is coming, how do you choose your last moments? And also, as someone who does have periods of great anxiety, seeing it portrayed pretty accurately on screen, and also seeing someone helping Joseph Quinn's character sort of get through that was very touching for me. It's a very touching film. I haven't seen this director's other movie. After watching this movie, that's the first thing I'm going to do is watch Pig, which I know you love as well. But it may not be the film you're expecting, but it is better than the film you're expecting. I love the first Quiet Place. I think the second one's fine. I think it's quite a different movie, but I think this might be my favorite Quiet Place movie. So yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I don't know what else I can even say at this point, because everything you're saying is correct.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. I mean, Joseph Quinn had his big breakout in Stranger Things season 4, in which he is legitimately great. To the point where I believe you didn't know he was English because
No,
he's so good in
I
Stranger
had no
Things
idea.
season 4.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope that this movie makes him the superstar that he. I mean, obviously he's going to be in Fantastic Four soon,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of hope this is the film that we remember as his big break, as his like big Hollywood movie break, because he's so good in it. His depiction of like being scared and lonely is
Mm-hmm.
so human and relatable. and I was just blown away by. I've only seen him in a few things, but I was blown away by him in this movie in particular. Um, and then Lupita Nyong'o is, she is one of the great actors of our time, and she is wonderful in this. I can't get over how they made her look. She's in the movie. She's suffering from cancer, terminal cancer, and she is one of the most vital people on social media, like in the world, probably. I don't know if you follow her on social media, but like she is a bright, vital human being. And between her body language and the makeup, she looks so believable. As someone who's seen someone in the later stages of being about to die with cancer, like she looks so believably like someone who's about to die of cancer as to be upsetting. And her being the like resilient one through the story, I thought was an amazing choice. It would have been so easy for it to be flipped the other way, where he was the savior and she was just like alone for the ride. But this film is way, way better than that. But everything you're saying is true. It's a wonderful human story. I like that it does. I also like it doesn't go into any of the lore of the monsters, and the reason for that is that we already know everything we need to know about the monsters. Not just from the previous two films, but like they're aliens, they are hungry, and they are attracted to sound. Is literally all you need to know about the monsters.
Totally.
I remember when this movie was being marketed, and people were like, "How is New York ever going to be quiet?" And it turns out the answer is an alien invasion will make the city quiet. But then I think it's really, really smart how it uses the cityscape, but with quiet, as to be off-putting and to build dread around what might be around each and every corner. I still think it's weird. I can't quite put my finger on why, but I can't quite reconcile that A Quiet Place came from the mind of John Krasinski. I don't he's a good actor. He's a great performer. He's, by all accounts, he's a great dude. And for some reason, I can't quite square my perception of him as a person with a horror franchise, like at all, and I was legitimately surprised to learn, although I do know he's a good writer, I was surprised to learn that he co-wrote this movie.
Wow.
Or at least the story of this movie. And I think it is great. I'm sort of with you. I don't know if I think it's my favorite A Quiet Place movie, but it is at least as good as the first one.
Yeah.
And I think if it is better, which it very well may be, and I'll maybe revisit this question after I've seen it more than once, because I've seen the first Quiet Place more than once, and it has been good every time. But if it is better, I would say it is because despite having a shorter resume in terms of featured directing, I think Michael Sarnowski has a slightly more distinct and forward voice in his choices. And I think that he has a slightly better understanding of how and when and why to move a camera. I find that the first Quiet Place is great, but it's a lot of static shots, and it's a lot of sort of very, it sounds negative, it's not meant to be, but it's very basic shots. Whereas this film, when there's one action scene in particular where it's a long, it might be a cheat, but it's a long single take through a building while the aliens are crashing through. You've seen parts of it in the trailer, but aliens are crashing through a glass ceiling, and it is one of the most thrilling, intense things I've seen this year, maybe. And I think that Sarnowski has a better grip on that kind of, not just that kind of scene, but also the kind of tone shifts between that and the quiet stuff before and after that than maybe Krasinski does. And again, A Quiet Place Part 1 is a great film. I'm not trying to disparage it. I'm just trying to offer some comparison here. And I think this movie ends pretty well perfectly. And that is a lot. I also like that, Djimon Hounsou is back for this movie, but in a way where it's not like, look at this guy from the previous movie. He just happens to be here in a believable way, because it is a prequel to Part 2. So, I don't know, man. I really love this movie. I really was really blown away by this movie. And if nothing else, I look forward to you watching Pig and having an emotional breakdown as a result. So.
Well, if it's as well written as this, then I can't wait. And visually so beautifully directed. I just want to point out there's one moment in this movie that really blew me away from a writing point of view. And sometimes a script, there's a line in a script that because you're from a specific cultural background, you understand the massive amounts of subtext in that line. And there's one line in this movie where she first meets Eric, Joseph Quinn's character, and he's completely lost. And she's like, "Don't you have friends? Don't you have family?" And he says, and he pauses, and he just says, "My parents are in Kent, in
Mm-hmm.
England." And the fact, so this is a perfect combination of, that's not just any county. Like Kent is quite an affluent county, and you wouldn't connect it with the kind of county that's going to survive in a zombie apocalypse. It's rich breedings, rich backgrounds, and then the way that he said it with that subtext of like, it's not just bad, it's they are in Kent, and then in England afterwards. There's just so much insight in that one line. It's the perfect combination of knowledge and writing, and then his delivery of it just blew me away. And it's such a stupid line to feel like that, but I just really love good writing like that. And the whole film is so well written and so unrushed,
Well,
and so good with the characters as well.
it's also a great example of the movie trusting its audience. Um, it would be so easy to make that kind of line something a lot more broad to play for its primarily American audience. But
Mm-hmm.
adding in that small amount of like cultural specificity is what can
Mm-hmm.
really elevate a film, and this movie's really great about that.
Yeah.
And I lost my train of thought, but yeah, that scene is great. And there's a scene. It's slowly revealed through the movie that she was before being stricken with cancer, she was a published and award-winning poet. And there's a scene in which one of her poems is read that I found
Mm-hmm.
low-key devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because it's a great poem, but because of how it is read and
Mm-hmm.
when it is read in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again pretty much all Joseph Quinn's performance in the moment,
Yeah.
which is again something else. Like they are both. This movie is mostly just the two of them, and
Mm-hmm.
they have such a great chemistry. The kind of people who they've just met, but they've known each other forever is a difficult chemistry to pull off, and
Mm-hmm.
they do it beautifully. And when their story and the resolution of their story is also, as a result, is devastating in the best way. And I actually can't wait to watch. Actually, I should say my wife and I watched this movie on Thursday, I believe. Today, our recording day is Sunday, and she has watched it already one more time. So like,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not one. She's one to rewatch movies, but not like the following day. You know what I mean? Like that's how
Yeah,
good
that's a
this
good thing.
movie. That's how good this
Yeah.
movie is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm curious how many stars you're going to give it.
So
For me it's a 4, which puts it on
yeah,
par with the first one. Um, this one on rewatch might be one that goes up though.
so it's a 4 for me as well. But there's a 10-15 minute period of this movie where I feel like they fall into a bit of a pattern of exploration, escape, and then after the third time it goes somewhere else. There was one moment in this film where I was like, okay, I've seen this a couple of times already quite recently with these two creeping and escaping and creeping and escaping in slightly different circumstances. I hope the rest of the movie isn't just that, and it isn't at all. So there's a little period in this movie that I think could have been tightened, but it's a very minor criticism for a film that really moved me and really touched me and blew me away visually, script writing, technically, acting, everything. So it's a 4 movie. It's a 4-star movie for me too.
Yeah, and there is a scene. You were talking about being worried about lore, and there is a scene that introduces some new lore, and it would have been very easy for the film. I think that what you're talking about and that scene in particular, although being very tense and well executed, um, is a little bit of a I don't know what word is here for this, but it sort of took me out of it a little bit, where it was a little bit more standard than I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But also, like, I kind of had forgotten about those scenes until you started talking about them because the rest of it is so good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, solid 4 stars. Might go up when I watch it again, but for now, solid 4 stars. And best cat in a movie so far this year. And let me just
As a
say that
cat,
if I was going through New York City during an alien invasion and my survival rested on my cats being quiet, I would be dead. Just for the
did
record.
did it bother you? Not enough to take a star off, but did it bother you that the cat does not meow once? Like not once, as a cat owner.
No, I've had cats that didn't meow. I've had
Oh,
quiet
okay.
cats before. I just don't have them right
Yeah,
now.
you'd be dead in seconds.
And there are, we do have one cat that is. We have a couple of cats, and we have one that is quieter, but she still talks all the time. She just has like a very low, raspy voice. So like instead of like we have two cats that are super loud, and we have one cat that is much more like meow, like very, might get away with it depending on if there's any ambient noise. But yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Quiet Place Day One. That's an
Yeah.
unabashed recommendation from the both of us. And if you have not seen Michael Sarnowski's 2021 movie Pig, 2021 movie Pig, which was my favorite movie of that year, I think you should watch A Quiet Place Day One. I think you should seek out Pig first, though, because it is maybe Nicolas Cage's best film. Both in my opinion and his, which is, I think, interesting.
I'm a little disappointed at the overall ratings on IMDb and Letterboxd. They're a little lower than like IMDb's got a 6.4 out of 10. I know it's aggregate, so you should ignore it, but it's that bothers me when something's this good and this well written and this technically great, and there's so many stories about it not doing well and not making enough money, and that makes me sad.
So this is where I will say that the user-generated ratings on IMDb and also Rotten Tomatoes, the user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are not worthwhile ratings of anything. They're if not that overall people have bad opinions, but that these ratings in particular are. I mean, for one, too easily gamed. But for two, like, there's a great, I think it's an XKCD comic about this, where like someone's downloading an app from the App Store that has a 3 average rating, but the 2 reviews it have are 1 star and 5 stars. Like, it's not a trustworthy metric. And I'm not sure that there is a good one for this. I'm famously on the fence about Rotten Tomatoes because of the way it presents its score. But I do think what is it at on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's 86 at the moment.
86. So like that means that 8.5 people out of 10, or I guess 17 people out of 20, have liked it, which I think is a more representative metric than an average of the scores people have given it. Right? Rotten Tomatoes' big problem has always been that it presents the consensus as quality, which is a problem. Because if you give a movie 6 out of 10 and rate it fresh, and everybody does that, then that's 100% movie, and that's not accurate. So, but if you approach Rotten Tomatoes from its intended point of view, not the one it currently gives, which is that like it's a number, the odds you're going to like it, I think it can be quite useful. So yeah, go see A Quiet Place Day One. In fact, it's still technically, I think, in cinemas, but it's on demand. You can rent or buy it now, and I would say that we gambled and purchased it, and I have no regrets. So
I am going to buy it on 4K physical. I don't tend to buy digital movies that much anymore, because unfortunately I can tell the difference between physical and digital 4K, and when something is this luscious, like visually, when it's so visually good, and this, I want that physical copy in my hand. I want to own that, so I will be buying it for sure when it comes out.
Yeah, I can also tell the difference. But the one thing I can tell you that the reason that my wife and I still end up buying things digitally a lot of the time is that I can't play a Blu-ray on my iPad. So
I know that's well. I mean, it's best of
that's
both. It's best of both worlds when it comes with a digital code as well. So yeah, that's also true.
yeah, except and this is gonna. I don't want to take us too far off topic, but not every movie comes with a digital copy from a service I want to have a digital copy
Yeah,
from anymore. Like there's a real
yeah,
fragmentation in the market that I'm getting a little tired of.
yeah, for sure.
Because it feels anti-consumer in a lot of ways, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole
Mm-hmm.
different thing to talk
No,
about.
for sure. Okay, let's move on to
And
the next movie.
any hoodles,
Oh,
let's move on.
yeah.
Because we're actually doing pretty okay for
We
time
got
at
20
the
minutes. We're doing okay. So tell me the deep and complicated synopsis for Deadpool and or Wolverine.
moment. All right, Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, so, in the wake of Deadpool 2, the end of which Deadpool uses Cable's time travel device to go back in time and save his girlfriend Vanessa. And then he travels around the universe a bit, and he manages to get, and this is right at the very beginning, he manages to get from his Earth, which is Earth 10,005, to Earth 616, which is the MCU's sacred timeline, and try to join the Avengers, and he is rejected. And then he gives up superheroing and becomes a used car salesman, which is objectively quite funny. And eventually, he sort of loses his lust for life, and eventually, the TVA, the Time Variance Authority from the MCU, shows up, saying that his universe's anchor being, which is Logan, the Wolverine, has died, which he famously did in Logan, and that the universe is going to be destroyed. And he offers Wade the chance to be moved to the sacred timeline. And Wade says, "Okay, I want to take my friends," and they say no. And then that starts off a quest across the multiverse to assemble a team of heroes to save his reality and to make Disney a ton of money via cameos and smart marketing. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did. That's pretty much it, really. So yeah, this is a movie that is like approximately 97% fan service and a ton of fun to watch. Basically, it's Deadpool goes to another universe, recruits a different Wolverine to like replace Logan from his timeline. This Wolverine let his universe down and is a total sad sack. And if you haven't seen it, he has a character arc where he goes from being a sad sack to realizing he doesn't, he can redeem himself by saving this timeline, this universe. And along the way, they end up in the Void from Loki, which is where things that the TVA have trimmed from the timeline go to waste away and die. And they meet a bunch of other characters, including just a ton of Fox Marvel superhero characters, which there's no way we can talk about this film without spoilers, but I'm going to try and keep it as spoiler free as I can. But there's a number of characters from Fox licensed Marvel superhero characters who show up, and the movie very overtly says that these characters never got an ending, and then aspires to give them an ending in the wake of Fox being, in the wake of their universe being destroyed, which is very, very, very overtly Disney having purchased Fox.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very meta movie, not just in Deadpool breaking the fourth wall, but in all of these aspects. Everything it's talking about is maybe the most obvious metaphor for one studio buying another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even counting the times where Deadpool's not basically saying that directly to camera. And the big bad is Cassandra Nova, who in the comic books is Charles Xavier's twin sister. and she is played by Emma Corrin, who is, I think, by far the best part of this movie. They are a great performer. I don't know if you've seen The Crown or if you've seen A Murder at the End of the World, but Emma Corrin is a really great actor. They are really interesting and dynamic and able to slip into character, in and out of character, in a way that, the same way we reacted to Florence Pugh when we started seeing her show up on scene, where they can just, again, like slip into a character and fully inhabit that character in a way that feels effortless. And this particular performance as this like sociopathic bad guy who can reach literally and figuratively inside someone's brain is wonderful. Every time they're on screen, it is wonderful. It does have a bit of a third act problem where there's a big bomb that's going to do the thing, and the good guys have to destroy the thing while the bad guy stands around monologuing about the thing, and not really actively participating in the finale. But yeah, I saw this movie the day after, like the day it came out, basically. So at this point, that's 2 weeks ago. And I will say two things. One is that I had an absolute blast watching it. I thought it was a great cinematic experience. It was a full cinema, and the crowd was really into it, and it was a great time. And the further away from it I get, the less I kind of like it. And not to say that I dislike it, but that it's a little bit too much, or maybe a lot too much, reliant on fan service than story. And that, like, it's got the weakest story of the three. And a lot of the stuff that I liked about the first two, and a number of characters that I liked in the first two, are just not present in this movie.
Yeah, that's a big problem, for sure.
Like Deadpool ostensibly goes on this universe hopping adventure to save his timeline so he can save his family, but his family are only in the first and last scene of the movie. And a number of characters, in particular Cable and Domino, who decided to stick around as a family at the end of two, aren't even in those scenes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. It's not a bad movie. Like, I had a great time watching this movie. I will almost certainly watch it again. If you like Ryan Reynolds' shtick as Deadpool, there's a ton here to love. There's a palpable chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. They are clearly best buds, and they are clearly having a great time. And it's fun to watch. It's a fun movie to watch. There's a number of cameos that are egregious, and there's a number of them that are absolutely fire. There's one in particular that I saw coming like ahead of the cinema, ahead of everyone else in the cinema. That was a great moment for me personally. If I'm not going to say which one it is, but I'd be willing to bet some people will be able to guess which one it is, involving a fairly prominent MCU actor. And I don't know. I have such mixed and complicated feelings about this movie now, because I did enjoy it. I do like it. I do think that there's a lot to enjoy, and it's also kind of slight and a little bit exhausting to think about. And I'm having the further away from it that I get, the more conflicted I get about it. I think it's a good movie, not a great movie. I think it leans too hard into the multiverse, into the cameos, and into trying to make jokes that and do things that only a certain version of comic book nerd are really going to truly appreciate. Which is great. I'm glad for them. I'm glad they're getting a movie that they will like and speaks to them personally. But it does so at times kind of at expense of what is a fairly basic story. And I don't know. It's very basic and it's very fun. And I mean, we're 2 weeks in. I don't think I have to recommend it because it sounds like basically everybody's already seen it. So that's easy enough. I don't know. I don't think so my feelings about it are fairly complicated. I think that yours are less complicated because I don't think you liked it very much. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, I thought it was exhausting. I didn't like it at all. And I just want to preface that by saying that I love Deadpool 1 and adore Deadpool 2. I think that I really, really enjoy those movies. And particularly Deadpool 2, I think is fantastic. And unfortunately, Domino is one of my favorite parts of that movie, and she's completely absent from this film. I just thought it was exhausting. I didn't think it was fun. I thought it was quite boring as it went on. I actually loved the opening at the beginning. I think the opening 20 minutes is fantastic, really fantastic and clever, and well done. The credits sequence is fun. The idea of what he uses to fight with is really fun. It sets the tone really, really well. And just as the movie went on and on, I just found it more and more of a drag, because every time something good happens, and there's lots of good ideas in this film and good performance in this film, I adore the idea of a void universe or a void multiverse area with story characters who don't have endings, like waiting for their ending. And I think Pixar's Soul did something a little bit similar, but I love that idea. I just adored it, and some of the cameos performances were really, really good. But all of them, because it's so stacked with cameos, it's just a revolving door of, hey, it's this guy, or hey, it's this person. I didn't think any of them was utilized well. There's one in particular, one of my favorite characters from a Wolverine adjacent movie, who's criminally underused in this film, um, and I didn't think. Um,
So this is where I say that, like, obviously we're going to try to avoid spoilers, but I don't think a character being in the movie is a spoiler at this point. So which one are you talking
okay, Daphne Keane. I
about?
love X-23. I love Laura. I love her. The Logan. Her relationship with Logan in Logan is one of my favorite duo performances in cinema. Seriously, and to have her as just really not much more than a rotating cameo. That she has one sort of touching scene with Logan to get with Wolverine to get him back on track, and but then when they descend into their big fight, there's very few scenes of her as X-23 or whatever her title is in this. Just really fun. And I felt that way about most of the cameos. Like it just got exhausting towards the end. Um, Emma Corrin's clearly having a great time playing Cassandra Nova, and I don't really know anything about Cassandra Nova, but um, the effect of Nova's hands, her hands going into people's brains and manipulating their brains was really good, and kind of almost like Sam Raimi-esque horror in a family movie, that kind of thing. And but for me, every time this movie did something good, it was matched by incessant Ryan Reynolds making a joke about it or being cynical. It's quite a cynical movie as well. It's quite snarky in a way that I don't feel the other two are, and it kind of dissolved any good feeling I had or any fun I was having. The constant snark and the constant like jokes coming from him, and I think um, what a lot of Deadpool cosplayers get wrong that the comics get right is that the Deadpool's a balance between the funny and the pathos and the action, and I think two has the balance perfectly, because there's a lot of seriousness in two and there's a lot of funny in two. There's some really serious notes in the second about um, the person you raise is a product of their environment, and one little decision can turn someone down one path or another path, but there's still redemption for that person possible. I really like quite complex story things, and this film just is shallow. It's shallow like a puddle. It exists to wrap up a acquisition from one company by another, and there's a lovely stick around for the credits, because my favorite part of this movie is the behind the scenes goodbye to all the 20th Century Fox superhero movies, which really got me. And of course, it's to Green Day's Time of Your Life, but it's that was very affecting. But by the end of this movie, I couldn't wait for it to finish. I was so bored,
Hmm.
and I was in a full cinema, and it was silent. I think I laughed pretty hard. There's one joke where Ryan Reynolds references Hugh Jackman, says, "If you don't be quiet, I'll make him sing the first act of Music Man," and I found that very funny. But really, I wonder if this is one of these films where you've got to see it day one with a bunch of movie nerds for it to really land properly. Because I didn't have a good time watching this film. My son has just watched the first two Deadpools and he loved them, and he thought this was just fine. And he was kind of tepid on it, and
It is interesting to
just
me that you said your cinema was quiet because mine was very into it. But I saw it
and I
again like day one, like with a
and
full
I think
crowd.
yeah, I think that's probably pretty integral to a movie that is only for comic fans, only for these movie fans. And I think if you've got a room full of like-minded people, you're going to have a better atmosphere than me seeing it just with a bunch of people on a Wednesday night. And it was a full cinema, which surprised me, which was nice. But everyone, it was just kind of quiet, and
So
I
yeah,
didn't, I didn't really enjoy it.
this comes back to what I was trying to say that like I'm glad that this exists for them, but like every time you've ever seen someone on a press tour be like, well, we made this film for the fans, not the critics. Like this film is what that is. Like this is a film that, and so this is a minor spoiler, but like Channing Tatum is in this movie playing Gambit, famous X-Man, and the joke is that he's in this movie because he was attached to a Gambit movie like 20 years ago that never got made, and so it's funny this in the movie, but that's like a deep level of knowledge that the average film goer doesn't necessarily have.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're like you and I, who do have that deep level of knowledge, Gambit shows up in a comics accurate costume, which if they had made a Gambit movie 20 years ago, would not be the case. So like it kind of gets stuff like that. Like the intention, I think, is good. And to be fair, I think Channing Tatum is hilarious in the movie. Like I laughed at almost everything he said in the movie, but like the details and nuances of it are still wrong. Like it's still a pretty shallow joke, despite how much like depth of knowledge it would require to get. And I think that is maybe part of the problem too, right? Like a lot of the jokes are fairly surface level. And the deep cuts require just like untold lore, and I just got there's two other things I want to talk about. One thing I forgot to mention when I was first talking about the movie is that it's Ryan Reynolds. If you like him, great. You're going to like him in this. Hugh Jackman, I think, is actually legitimately good in this. He's a great actor, and he does have like just enough scenes to have a fully executed arc, and he's the only one in the whole film who does have that. And I did think his scene with Daphne Keane, and I will say I sort of get what you're talking about, that she's a little underused, especially when it comes to the fighting. But her scene with him is great, probably the best acted scene in the movie. And Emma Corrin is great. I really enjoy Matthew Macfadyen in this movie as well, as the sort of like pretty stereotypical British bureaucrat who's like all pomp and all buffing his chest out right up until it's revealed that he's a total coward and a sociopath. And I thought he was a great choice for that. And if we're going to do multiverse movies, I think this is the kind of movie that are perfect for that, where you bring in cameos and you make jokes out of them, and that's basically it. And I think the other great version of a multiverse movie is like, let's jump to this other universe to see like a potential future that, if the hero doesn't act, this is what will happen. But when we came out of this movie, and again, like I'm a huge comic book nerd, probably bigger than you, definitely maybe bigger than you. And I don't personally have a problem following all the multiverse shenanigans, but we came out of this movie and my wife said, that was really fun and really funny. And if I never see another multiverse movie again, it'll be too soon.
She's got a point.
And she loves Deadpool. She liked this movie more than I did. But she is so done with the multiverse at this point. And she hasn't even watched half of it. She didn't watch Loki with me. She doesn't watch all of these things. And she just finds it annoying. Not confusing, annoying. And she's just sort of over... there's a real trend right now of multiverses and timey-wimey shenanigans, and she's over all of it. She thinks it's really lazy, and I'm having a hard time disagreeing with her.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I can't not recommend the movie. I do think I had a great time watching it. I think you'll probably have a good time watching it too. But I don't think it's as good as the first two Deadpools.
No.
And I don't. And the more I think about it, the more it bothers me that like Vanessa's not in it really, and that Blind Al is not really in it, and that Cable and Domino and Dopinder are not really in it. That the whole point of Deadpool 2 is finding your family, and this movie then does not. He doesn't. He abandoned his family to spend time with Wolverine, and the more I think about it, the more I dislike that.
Mm-hmm.
So I still maintain I had a good time. So for me, it's still a 3 out of 5. But as much as I had a good time, I do wish it was a better film overall. Yeah,
it's a 2 for me. I rewatch Deadpool 2 quite a lot. I rewatched 1 recently. I never need to see this film again. It's 2 rather than a 1, but there's some really good ideas in here, and I really like the first 20 minutes, but the rest left me very cold.
Yeah, and why wasn't Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Yukio? Why weren't they in this? Like, why wasn't Colossus along for the ride? Like, it just feels like they got Hugh Jackman and they were like, well, we don't need all these people anymore,
right?
And exactly. I find that, like, if you want to talk about the power of family, great. But maybe have the power of family be the thing that makes him come around, right? Like, it's...
Again, such a real waste of everything they set up into. And a bunch of really good actors with a really good set of characters that bounce off each other. And all just left for 2 scenes at a kitchen table. Really bothered me.
You know what else really bothers me about thinking about it is that, like, there's a scene in this movie where Wolverine finally puts on his comic accurate mask. He wears his comic accurate costume, which, if I can go on a small nerd rant, it was never meant to be yellow and blue. Blue is the color we use to represent black in comic book movies. It should be yellow and black, but anyway, it's a whole other thing. Because even Spider-Man's costume should be red and black, and artists use blue to make shadows in black, and now his costume is blue. And anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so there's a scene where he puts on his comic accurate mask, and then a few scenes later there's a shot of an egregious shot of his 8-pack of abs. Like, his chest is effectively all abs, and the abs shot is treated with more important than the mask, which is really interesting. And I feel like there's definitely some room for a little more exploration of the fact that Deadpool is a pansexual character that the movie doesn't do anything with.
Of course, yeah.
I don't know.
No, I didn't like it.
It's a
shame. I was really looking forward to it, and I really love the other 2 films, so yeah, it's a massive disappointment for me.
Yeah, but maybe this will put a pin in it. Maybe this will put a pin. I mean, it's not going to put a pin in the multiverse. We're not going to get that until Secret Wars or whatever. But maybe. I just feel I'm worried. My big worry here is, again, not that it's bad, but that, like, Hollywood is going to learn all the wrong lessons, because this fits in that same category as the Ghostbusters Afterlife, not the most recent one, but the one before, where it is like a masterwork of, I recognize that thing from another movie.
This movie is only that. Absolutely, yeah.
And this one is better executed than that. It's not quite as, like, it's reliant on it, but in a more sincere way, which is a weird distinction to make. Like, it's less cynical in that way. But that's, at the end of the day, that's like 90% of the movie. Like, that's and that's not enough to sustain it as something.
No, not at all.
And I probably will rewatch it, but I think that when the time comes, I'm going to go back to 1 and 2 way more.
Absolutely, it felt exactly like an extended SNL sketch to me. like almost exactly the same in tone, where they get a bunch of cameos in, and who's playing the president? Oh, it's Tom Hanks. Oh, look, it's Tom Hanks. Everyone, I felt exactly like that to me.
Yeah, I did. I mean, again, I had a good time watching it, but so yeah, 3 stars. Do what you will with that number.
Go watch Deadpool 2 instead.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna see it anyway, but if you haven't already, because let's see here.
And also, it's made a ton of money. There's a 0% chance we won't see Deadpool back in a future MCU project, and they probably already greenlit a new one, because MCU has been on a perceived downward spiral. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter, because that's the perception of it. This has been a major upward spike for it. So exactly as you say, they're going to learn the wrong lessons from that. Like, it's making money. Okay, how do we make more money doing that then? If this is what they want, we just do copious cameos and fourth wall breaking, and we get Ryan Reynolds in to write the damn thing, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. Oh, and it's already crossed $1 billion 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
that's definitely a thing. So,
so
it's
maybe this is the natural conclusion of something that's built to reflect a comic culture that only wants to wade in nostalgia. Pun intended. Maybe this is the natural conclusion of that. This is the Ouroboros is going to continue as it references itself into oblivion.
I mean, the real problem here is if they do keep using Wolverine or Deadpool in future MCU projects, that I feel like with She-Hulk, who also breaks the fourth wall, and for the record, who did it first, that character stands in such a way that if she is added to a team, she doesn't need to be breaking the fourth wall. And if she's in a team up movie where she's not the focus, she can just occasionally like glance at the camera or whatever, and so that we know she still knows, right? Whereas like Deadpool's whole thing is breaking the fourth wall, and in any other film than his own title film, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we'll find out. He's going to be popping up in all the mainline X-Men's and Avengers and whatever from now on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway.
Okay. Well, should we wrap it there?
Yeah, let's do that. So, yeah, A Quiet Place Day 1. Definitely go see it. Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, I think we're both always on team see it for yourself, and I think you might still, despite how shallow it might be, I think you'll still have a good time watching it. So I will say definitely see it, assuming you haven't already, because you probably have. If you've liked the show, if you've liked our discussion, please feel free to do one of a couple things to support us, one of which would be tell your friends, tell your family. Give people links to us on Spotify or Apple or whatever podcasting platform that you listen on. And also, if you could give us a 5-star review or smash that subscribe button, these are the things that help get us in front of more earballs and to help us broaden the show. And we would love to do that. If you'd like to help more directly, we do also have a Patreon at patreon.com/MCSimpson, which is me. And every week that we do a show, we also do a bonus show. This week we talked about films that are generally not liked that we unironically do like. And then we caught up a little bit with our film and TV watching from the time that we were on hiatus. And that'll be available to all patrons around the same time you're listening to this. So go find that. Last but not least, or second to last but not least, if you want to watch these movies, we do put JustWatch powered links to all the movies we cover in the homepage for this episode. So go to the notes, click on the homepage. If you use those links to find and watch the shows that we're talking about, that will help us keep the lights on as well. Last but not least, we are here in Vancouver, BC, Canada. We exist and record on the unceded ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. And thank you so much for listening and for joining us on this awesome Friday.